Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. I need a book. Gopijana Vallabha Giri Varadari. A book. Could I have a book, please? Gopijana Vallabha Giri Varadari. Gopijana Vallabha Giri Varadari. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Thank you. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Girari Radha Girari Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada 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 Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Jayam Vishpad Paramahamsa Prabhajakacharya Sotar Sata Shishimadesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj. Srila Prabhupada ki. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Samaveda Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki. Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shishi Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're getting to hear from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, 27th chapter, attack by Chandravega on the city of Puranjan. Text number 6. Tasyam ajanayat putran paranjayam paranjana Shatanyekadasha Virad Ayushodham Atat Yagad Tasyam Ajanayat Putran Paranjayam Paranjana Shatanyekadasha Virad Ayushordham Atat Tasyam Ajanayat Putran Paranjayam Paranjana Shatanyekadasha Virad Ayushordham Atat Tasyam Ajanayat Putran Paranjayam Paranjaya Shatanyekadasha Virad Ayushordham Atat Tasyam Ajanayat Putran Paranjayam Paranjana Shatanyekadasha Virad Ayushordham Atat Tasyam Ajanayat Putran Paranjanyam Paranjana Shatanyekadasha Virad Ayushordham Atat. Okay. Tasyam, within her. Anjanayat, he begot. Putran, sons. Paranjayam, in Paranjani. Paranjana, King Paranjana. Shatani, hundreds. Ekadasha, 11. Virat, O King. Ayusha, of life. Ardham, half. Ata, in this way. Atyagat, he passed. Translation. The great sage Narada then addressed King Pachinibarshad. O one whose lifespan is great, Virat. In this way, King Paranjan begot 1,100 sons within the womb of his wife, Paranjani. However, in this business, he passed away half of his lifespan. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In this verse, there are several significant words, the first of which are Ekadasha, Shatani. Paranjan had begotten 1,100 sons within the womb of his wife, and thus passed away half of his life. Actually, every man follows a similar process. If one lives for 100 years at the utmost, in his family life he simply begets children up to the age of 50. Unfortunately, at the present moment, people do not even live 100 years. Nonetheless, they beget children up to the age of 60. Another point is that formerly, people used to beget 100 to 200 sons and daughters. As will be evident from the next verse, King Paranjana not only begot 1,100 sons, but also 110 daughters. At the present moment, no one can produce such huge quantities of children. Instead, mankind is very busy checking the increase of population by contraceptive methods. We do not find in Vedic literatures that they ever used contraceptive methods, although they were begetting hundreds of children. Checking population by contraceptive method is another sinful activity. But in this age of Kali, people become so sinful, they do not care for the resultant reactions of their sinful lives. King Paranjan lay down with his wife, Paranjani, and begot a large number of children. There's no mention in these verses that he used contraceptive methods. according to the Vedic scriptures, the contraceptive method should be restraint in sex life. It's not that one should indulge in unrestricted sex life and avoid children by using some method to check pregnancy. If a man is in good consciousness, he consults with his religious wife. And as a result of this consultation, with intelligence, one advances in his ability to estimate the value of life. In other words, if one is fortunate enough to have a good, conscientious wife, he can decide by mutual consultation that human life is meant for advancing in Krishna consciousness and not for begetting a large number of children. Children are called parinama, or byproducts. And when one consults his good intelligence, he can see that his byproducts should be the expansion of his Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadandikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shiva Shakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhana Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakopatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this particular verse in purport has so many points in it that many modern intelligent men and women would go, man, what a fairy tale. And once you get out of the fairy tale, then you try to tell me what the moral of the subject matter is. Forget about it. So first of all, 1,100 sons. That's a lot of sons in this day and age. My grandmother, my father's mother, she had 13 children. That was a pretty good sized family. When you lived on a farm, it didn't hurt having a big family. This displacement from people off of the land and brought into the city, then it becomes a very big burden to have a family of any size. But it's worth noting that this wasn't in this present day and age. This was in SanDiego. Age of the person. Srila Prabhupada saying the quota in Kali Yuga is 100 years old. I mean, if somebody gets to the point where they reach 100 years old, if they still carry on the tradition, you get a call from the president and says, hey, happy birthday. You made it to the century mark. They used to do that, yeah. Yeah? Who is this? But in the previous age, Dwapara Yuga, they lived to be 1,000 years old. I was brought up in a Christian background. I was taught the Bible, and Noah, for example, he lived to be 900 years ago. So, according to, going back a few generations, you try to calculate, you get back near the end of Dwapara Yuga, so it makes sense. The age before that, Treta Yuga, they lived to be 10,000 years old. In this age, we're hearing from the Pachini Barshots, hearing the analogy, it would be contextual in the present day, 100,000 years. Now, it seems pretty amazing. But understanding that from Scripture, then to have 1,100 sons, that's not that big a time period out of your 100,000 years. Let's go ahead and add another 110 daughters to make it a good round number. There was a lot of sex life going on between Puranjana and his wife. And, it's like my Prabhu said yesterday when we were talking a little bit, just expanding a bit on this subject matter, it's like, my God, what's this have to do with the Bhagavatam? Like, is this a topic for brahmacharis? Well, just to allay any doubts, it's Narada Muni who's speaking this story. And it has a point. It does have a moral. He's basically saying, Jeev Jago. And in the analogy as it carries on, if you don't wake up to your spiritual identity and what the purpose, the value of human life is, then you're going to be forced to take another birth after dying and go through it all again, through all the miserable conditions of life. Now, things weren't all that bad if you compare it from then to now. I mean, it was actually quite utopian almost in Satya Yuga. But still, from the highest planet, Brahma Loka, where they don't even possess gross material bodies like we do. They don't suffer the way we do. They don't smell a bag of bones and obnoxious elements like we do. They still are forced to die. So that's what comes with the material body, and it's stated throughout the Bhagavatam again and again and again, countless times. Wake up. This is not what human life is for. To absorb yourself in trying to titillate and pleasure your senses and your mind. Srila Prabhupada said, actually, every man follows a similar process. If he lives for 100 years, at most in his family life, he simply begets children up to the age of 50. Well, this is actually civilized life. This is the Vedic culture. At age 50, the ideal is then you enter Nirvana Prastha. You begin to practice some austerities. Kali Yuga is so topsy-turvy, messed up, very difficult to prosecute any aspect of spiritual life, save and except the chanting of the holy names. That's anybody can do. But at age 50, one should have finished the procreation of children, and they should be grown by this time, so that they can take the responsibility of taking care of mom. And if she doesn't want to go on pilgrimage, if she doesn't want to perform austerities, then the grown-up son can take responsibility. I mean, the Vedic culture is so perfect. This Srimad Bhagavatam has all the answers to all the problems, whether we're talking about individually, locally, or even globally. It has all the answers. I could have even said universally. Any and all problems throughout the universe. I've already said, and someone who's not familiar with the absolute truth or Vedic literatures, when I said Brahma Loka, the topmost planet, they have no clue. What? There's, sometimes people foolishly still contemplate, could there be life on other planets? Because they think we're the only thing, only species, the only life, humanoid, breathing air, etc. Water planet. But there are countless, 8,400,000 species of life on countless planets. And there is civilization on all of them. So, Srila Prabhupada then goes to say, but in this day and age, unfortunately, even though they won't even live to be 100, they'll have children even up to the age of 60. Well, now that's a low ball. Men are having children in their 70s. Yeah, it happens. They're rich. They don't have to change diapers. trying to squeeze out some pleasure, to the fag end of life. And yesterday's class, went into that at great length. And how it just passes by just like that. Now that I'm in an older body and I see how the chakra of time is spinning so much faster than before. My experience of time is just so quick. Oh my gosh. It's amazing. Time is so valuable. Human form of life is so valuable. So that's why, this lust, which is the all-devouring, sinful enemy of this world, lust, anger, greed, it's so self-detrimental. And people don't have a clue. They think that's what will make me happy. But Narada Muni has said a number of times, like he preached to, what was the king, Suvarna Sen in Navadvip. He told him, by all your activities, he was living a kingly life just like Prachina Barshat, and he was enjoying like anything, ruling the kingdom. He's taking care of his duties, no problem there. He was a responsible husband, father, etc. But there was the one most important thing missing: cultivation of God consciousness, his spiritual life. The most important thing missing. So Narada Muni says, well, let's talk about it. If you can convince me that by your activities, by your lifestyle, that you will eradicate misery, unhappiness, and accomplish or achieve happiness, I'll stop what I'm doing and join you right now. But we see, if we are sober, step back from it all and look with some intelligence, we'll see that none of this pursuit for sense gratification eliminates misery or gives happiness. The verse was yesterday. I was hoping we were going to sing it together. Edana yovana pruta parijana iteki ache paritire. Kamala dala jala jivana talamala bajahum hari parinitere. Yeah, there is some happiness in this world, but it's like a drop of water tottering on a lotus leaf. Here in America, Balboa Park, you'll see lilies. And the substance of the leaves of lilies or lotuses, they're like waxed. Water gets on it, it beads up, it rolls right off. Yeah, you get some temporary little, and that's it. But for the eternal person, there's no satisfaction there. There's no happiness, there's no peace, there's no freedom from anxiety and misery. Just the opposite when you pursue that happiness as your most important goal. So this is so very important. So we, like I said, countless times throughout the Bhagavatam, this is driven home. King Rishabhadeva's teachings, Rishabhadev, an incarnation of the Lord, starting off with the 4th verse in the 5th chapter, Nunam Pramatta Kurate Vikarma. He instructs his sons, sense gratification from the past caused this body and all the suffering that comes with it. And the sense gratification we pursue in this life forces us to get another suffering body. In text 7, he says, even if one is very learned and wise, he's mad, he's crazy. If he does not understand, sense gratification is a useless waste of time. Doesn't matter what everybody else says. We don't care about the polls. We don't care about majority rule. We don't care if we're the only one standing at the shelter of our spiritual master's lotus feet and saying, you're all running off the cliff. You're all running into the jaws of death needlessly. One who is not understanding that it's a useless waste of time. They try to be happy at home and by sex, and this brings him misery. his life is no better than an animal's. Super valuable human form of life, God-given intelligence that you could actually grasp and realize your true identity and your eternal relationship with the Lord, and yet you waste it like an animal. I mean, in some ways, the animals enjoy better than we do. And that's why people who misuse their lives in animalistic propensities, you don't need a human form of life. In fact, most of the people in human form of life would not qualify for human form in previous ages because of the animalistic mentality. The 8th verse, Pumsam Striya Maitani Bhavametam, very famous verse, quoted again and again by Srila Prabhupada. This attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. Now, I'm not a wordsmith like my Prabhu, but principle, I wanted to look it up. It means a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for a system of belief or behavior or for a chain of reasoning. So, attraction between male and female is the basic principle. It's the foundation. It's the chains. It's the super glue that keeps us in this material world. It ties the male and female's hearts together. Once you engage in sex, Maya's got you. You've just become super the word I want, bound up. Like my grandmother was expert in the patients to untie those knots that were like, oh, grandmother, help me out here. I mean, there are certain knots that are just like impossible. Good gosh, you'd have to have the patience of Job to untie it. But she did. Once you have sex with someone, man, whether you're a good match or not, very, very, very difficult to break it off. Of course, someone might say, I got no problem. Of course, they weren't putting much into it anyway. This is, once again, the animalistic standard of life. You know, what's love got to do with it? It's just about lust. Let me, satisfy my senses. But anyway, it ties the hearts of the male and females together. Thus, attachment and, what does it say? Attraction increases. So that then not only do you become attached to your body and the body of your mate, now you're attached to your home, to your children, to your relatives, to your money, to your assets. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Just binding you further and further into the repetition of birth and death. Text 15, 17, and 18, basically they're all the same principle. A father, a spiritual master, a king should not engage or instruct his dependents in sense gratification and further entangle them in Maya or the cycle of birth and death. We had a verse from this morning's Vedic Thoughts saying the same thing, that a teacher should never encourage or assist their subordinates. So Rishabdev is saying any superior should never misguide. It's like taking a blind person by the hand and then just pushing them in a ditch. A deep, dark, waterless well. It's not right. So this lust, very difficult to break. One has to pray like anything for the protection of Madan Mohan. Krishna is the attractor of Cupid. Cupid just breaks his arrows, throws his bow away when it comes to Krishna. Krishna never desires, in an exploitive, selfish manner, sex life. That's what we do, trying to imitate Krishna. It doesn't work. Our identity is subordinate to Krishna. Our identity is a servant of Krishna, an assistant to his fulfillment of desire. And it's on the platform of love. serving each other. Selfless. That's the purity that is love that exists between the Lord and His servants, and vice versa. So we're meant to hear regularly, continually, because if one is determined, if one is sincere, then this whole reality opens up to one. That there is a higher pleasure than just sex. I mean, sex, the climax of sex, the pleasure of sex, it's like, they'll fluff it up, they'll try to stretch it out, they'll do so many this and that, but ultimately it's just like, once again, a tottering drop of water on the lotus leaf. It's so transient and ultimately so unfulfilling. Otherwise, why do these famous rich people brag that I, bedded 1,000 women, 10,000 women, the one sports star said. Chewing the chewed. It's like an addiction. You find your worth in exploiting that person. I'm subjugating them to my will, my desire. And just like the modes are all pervading and are what fashion our sense of identity and activity, 3 modes are there in sex also. And, when one is chewing the chewed addictively like that, it just becomes more and more degraded in the modes. Things we won't even discuss, don't even want to think about. Because it is always unfulfilling. So you try harder in so many ways and become more and more degraded and more bound up. So, Krishna consciousness. This is the solution. The pleasure of simply hearing the names of Krishna, chanting the names of Krishna, discussing the names, the qualities, the beauty of His form, His activities. It's a source of unlimited pleasure. But you have to submit yourself to the process under the guidance and shelter of one who has their love reawakened to truly experience what's being offered. I also wanted to point out in this regard something that Srila Prabhupada doesn't make much of in the purport, but I found it to be very significant and more significant than ever these present days. At the present moment, no one can produce such huge quantities of children. Instead, mankind is very busy checking the increase of population by contraceptive methods. Now, if I have time, I'll get back to the contraceptive sinful side of it, but increase of population. Even when Srila Prabhupada was with us, say, 50 years ago, or how many years ago, he was saying that this concept of overpopulation is ridiculous. It's absurd. There are countless living entities on the planet, and Mother Nature has no difficulty. It's not a strain for her to provide for all the living entities on Earth. No matter how many humans. I wish I could bring it to mind. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he discussed how many members are in the family of Krishna. He discussed how many teachers, just teachers there were of Krishna's, how many? If he had 160,000 plus children, and then they all had so many different teachers. Just in Dwarka and the family and the community of Krishna, it's mind-boggling. When Srila Prabhupada was speaking, when this canto came out, I looked it up, there was just shy of 4 billion people on the planet at the time. And the demons were discussing about there's way too many useless eaters at that point. Now we're just shy, we're approaching 8 billion. This contraption said 7.7 plus billion people at this point on planet. And exponentially, it's just going to keep increasing because of lust. Animals. They don't stop. How can they? It's the highest pleasure that they know of. So it's a big problem. And people don't realize how much of a problem those who are in leadership positions that are demons think it is. They come right out and say it. They can couch it in flowery language, but they want to eradicate a big chunk of the population. It's in black and white. I've read it. You know, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati and Srila Prabhupada said we shouldn't mention names on the Vyasasan. Let's discuss philosophy. You shouldn't call a cow Mr. Cow. You can say some animal with 4 hoofs, horns, and gives milk. Gives some idea. But we're not naming names. But there's a global organization that 190 plus countries have signed up to a projected goal of bringing the whole world under one governance and reducing the population. Most of the people who have leadership positions do not care about the citizenry. Certainly not the animals, which Vedic civilization, Vedic culture, they have as many rights as the people do. Heavens. Certainly don't see that. So they don't care. There's plenty, with proper management, there's plenty of ability to end world hunger, to end poverty. I mean, one man, with multi-billions of dollars could easily arrange that everybody was given a plot of land what was Bob Cohen a member of when he was in India? The Peace Corps. I mean, there could be so many organizations like that where you educate even a city boy like me. This is how you do it. Live a simple life. Be happy. Simple means peaceful. Peaceful means happy. This is found in Vedic culture. This is what Bhagavatam offers. The Lord says, in the beginning of creation, I sent forth generations of men and demigods and blessed them with this and gave them the process of sacrifice to please the Lord. And by doing so, they could live a happy, prosperous life and become liberated in the end and go back home, back to Godhead. No more miseries. This is the program. This is what's being offered. But why are people so greedy? The leaders are the most greedy. 100 billion, that's not enough money. I got to have my company expand. I just saw it yesterday, came in the mail. When I was a young boy, Sears would put out a catalog and we'd look at things. You remember this, Dravida? You remember when you were a child and you'd get the catalog and start looking through for toys, ideas for Christmas gifts? Well, they don't do that so often now. Those kind of, the malls and whatever, they're a thing of the past. But Amazon, I saw yesterday the magazine they sent out to my home for all the kids' toys. First time I'd ever seen it. Like, it's not enough that you've grabbed the young people and many of the people forced at home to buy through you. So your gross worth is, doubled or whatever. It's not enough. We got to catch the old fogies who still at home, Let's put it right in their hands so that, Greed. It's a gate to hell just as bad as lust and anger. Never satisfied. Never satisfied. And it's interesting to note, I was raised a Christian, and I'm going to point out something that I found to be much more satisfying in Krishna consciousness, a more complete and advanced understanding of the Lord and His desires for His sons and daughters. I learned that the earth was given to man and woman, and they were meant to be stewards of the planet. They were in charge of all the other species. But in my upbringing, it was understood that meant that we are here to enjoy this world. It's ours to enjoy. This is not the concept of Krishna consciousness. That is not the pure understanding of the eternal dharma, activities of the living entity reciprocating with God. Yes, we're given duties. We're meant to be stewards of other subordinate species and the planet, but not that it's meant for our selfish enjoyment. And that mentality carried over into science when science started breaking away from religion. I mean, for the majority of scientists, certainly those who, influence it, who get the biggest grants and this and that, they're atheistic. So now they've broken away from God, but they even more so are pushing that the planet is mine for the taking. It's here for me and mine. And forget everybody else. That's why we have way too many useless eaters. I saw this one billionaire, famous billionaire, say it right in front of an audience. He's being filmed and everything, 3 years ago, whatever it was, saying, yeah, overpopulation is a big, big problem, but we can reduce it. We have to reduce it. And one way is through medicine and vaccines. Ding, 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 ding. Alarm should be going off. The biggest, most greediest, influential people buy into it. It's overpopulation. It's not like they couldn't take care of everybody, but it's about power and control. You can't control this many people. It's a big stretch. It doesn't have to be. Let's just get rid of them. But the Bhagavatam addresses this. The culture of Bhagavatam, first of all, it can replace consumerism with absorption in the leelas of the Lord, in the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. This is an ecological alternative that can be offered to the youth, that they can get behind. Consumerism is obviously destroying the planet. It's based on greed. It's based on that it's mine. I grabbed it. It's mine. Try and take it away from me. No. Bhagavad culture, Vedic culture, Vaishnav culture specifically, it views all living entities equally. Everyone is equal as spirit soul. And everybody should accept the quota given to them by God. No problem. Some people have bigger quotas than others. Prachina Bharshat's a king. He's got a lot more responsibility than the farmer in the countryside, etc. So he can be facilitated. But the kings of the Rajarshis, those who took guidance from the saintly devotees and Brahmins, they didn't just milk it thinking this is what will give me pleasure. Like any and everybody else at the age 50, everybody but the servant class, they would become practice in detaching from their duties and their family life. I saw a picture, if anyone wants to see at breakfast, a few pictures. There was one of these richest guys in Saudi Arabia. His I think it was a Mercedes-Benz. It was gold with diamonds throughout it all. It was diamond studded. The stairs in his house had, it was covered with glass, but it was full of diamonds. His bed, gold, and they showed his some of his gold. Showed a shop he had, golden bars as far as you could see. And what good is it? That man is now out of that body, and who knows where he went. This greed just throws you down in the word-for-word synonyms for one of these verses. It was the darkest dungeon of hellish life. They have no idea what awaits them. As Prabhupada said, they don't have a clue. They don't care about sinful reactions. So they either don't know or they don't care. Both of them. If you follow the Vedic guidelines of the Lord, knowingly or unknowingly, you'll be rewarded. If you break them knowingly or unknowingly, in the same way, you'll be punished. It's just the law of the land. It's the way it works in the material worlds. So, Mother Nature, the earth, has equal rights just like we do. They talk about racism. It's a big thing now, racism. Everyone, every individual, every race should be treated equally like any other race. Humanity as a whole has more rights than the individual. We have to be on a equal playing level in terms of rights. That's what's being pushed and directed now. Well, Mother Nature, we're completely dependent upon her. She's the representation of the Lord. There's so many ways in which He represents the Lord. She represents His power, His splendor, His bounty, His wisdom, His beauty, and impartiality. In India, they've actually come up with giving some rights to some of the rivers, sacred rivers. I think I saw that legislation. I hope it passed. They recognize nature is not an energy, it is a personality. And it has just as much rights as you and I do. And we're not meant to try and exploit her. The joke is, yeah, you can exploit me for a certain amount of time and then just wait. With a simple little hurricane, earthquakes, pestilence, plagues, whatever you want, Mother Nature can shake it up and serve you the cocktail if that's what you deserve, and wipe out millions. Fires. You can't defeat nature. We're tiny, we're insignificant, and this idea that we're the center of the world, the controllers of the world, only takes you to hell. And this idea of thinking you can enjoy outside of service to the Lord is just the biggest illusion and the biggest disservice that you can perpetrate on your children or on anybody else. And the fact that you will actually think it's normal to kill anyone, what to speak of a child within you, if you don't, just because your desire to enjoy will blind you, or just the fact you think, I am this body and I control this body, it's mine, to the detriment of a child, a life within you. Srila Prabhupada said, these people who perform abortions, the doctors, we don't want to go into too much detail because it is so abhorrent. But Srila Prabhupada said they will take birth again and again and again and again and never see the light of day. For every child they kill, they'll have to be forced into a womb and experience the same punishment or same, act that they did to the child. And this is, people are clamoring. Even here, it's weird that people could get behind this. It just shows, it's like the snake mentality. I think some snakes eat their young when they're born. It's like, so demoniac. That's the age we live in. We're meant to take to Krishna consciousness so that we can understand we're spirit soul. All other life is spirit soul and is sacred, and it should be given equal rights, equal benefits like I expect for myself. We should accept whatever comes to us by God's grace with minimum endeavor. It's already predestined by our previous activities, and in this life you're accumulating what you will experience in the future. And then give Mother Nature her dues. Give up this greed of trying to exploit through the hearing and chanting of the holy names of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And taste the nectar of Krishna's Leelas. Oh, is he wonderful. Could I just read one little page ending with some glories of Krishna spoken by demigoddesses as they observed Radha and Krishna. They had just finished activities at midday and Krishna went back to the cows to play with his friends. in the forests and pastures of Vrindavan. They compare Krishna to the sun. And they said, Saki, the sun and Krishna are both friends of the lotus flowers, and they're both effulgent. But Krishna, being heavy or valuable, stays on the earth, while the sun, being light or cheap, hangs in the sky with its yellow light. The Creator is a big fool trying to compare them with each other. Is there anyone who will compare a mustard seed to gold? The sun shines only in the day, but Krishna shines day and night. And the sun is only visible to the eyes, but Krishna showers the eyes with a stream of transcendental bliss. The sun only reveals moving and non-moving beings, shedding his light on them, but Krishna reveals the religion of sacred love for him. The sun has harsh rays, but Krishna's soft rays are like an ocean of sweetness. The sun only removes the material darkness, but Krishna removes the darkness of Maya. The beauty of the sun is covered over by the clouds sometimes, but Krishna's beauty defeats the clouds. Fast forward a little here. Okay, the earth is surely blessed by the sunrise, but the same sun also sets again. But Krishna blesses the earth with the touch of his lotus feet day and night. At the end of the day, the sun goes to, and the Sanskrit words are given to show the play on words, but goes to the eastern direction, Ganvadishvara Asha. And Krishna, who is a mind of incomparable qualities, goes to fulfill the Asha, desires of his Ganvadishvara parents, the masters of the cows, going out of the sight of us unfortunate demigoddesses. The sun experienced this kind of chatter of the Devis like nectar to his ears. He was so foolish to think that they were speaking about him when they see Krishna going to the east. He falsely thinks himself to be so fortunate and attractive. There is no comparison to anything about Krishna. Any descriptions we hear, they only give us an indication, a directional sense of how unlimitedly rewarding it will be in every sense of reality. To every sense, eyes, nose, tongue, ears, touch, mind, every which way. Krishna will be the fountainhead of our unlimited pleasure and love. He's just waiting to reveal himself. Last thing I'm going to say, I'm just going to throw it because I've been noticing it and it's been kind of paining me a little bit. Do you know what Krishna says is the supreme knowledge and most confidential, supreme instruction, the most confidential knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita? That's the answer. He says, my dear friend Arjuna, well, because you're my very dear friend, I'm going to give you the supreme knowledge and the most confidential. We've heard confidential, more confidential, most, but now he's laying it on. This is the pinnacle of confidential. Listen carefully. Become my, how's it? Manmana, always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your obeisances to me. Obeisances. It's one of the easiest ways to please Krishna. Super easy. But, and let me give you an example. Sankhya purvaka namagani natabi kalavasani krito. The 6 Goswamis were engaged in chanting the holy names of the Lord and bowing down in a scheduled measurement. Do you know how many obeisances some of the Goswamis would do daily? Yeah, 1,000 to devotees. That was their quota. That's their sadhana. I'm going to offer obeisances 1,000 times to devotees. And I think it was Rajendranandana Dasa, another 1,000 to the Lord. But we don't get it. I'll tell you what was the catalyst for me understanding it. Jananivas Prabhu shared with me a dream he had one time with Lord Nrsingadev. He was behind the Lord on his altar, and he was looking out at all the devotees. And so many of the devotees came before Nrsingadev, and they paid what's commonly known in ISKCON as the hatchet obeisances. You know what that is, right? You just put your head down on the floor and then you get up. Chop. And then you go on. And he understood that Lord Nrsingadev would be so much more pleased at the devotees when they placed their head on the ground at his feet, submitting themselves before him, and would say a prayer, that he would be so much more pleased. And when he shared that dream with me, that was it. I don't blow the opportunity to so easily please the Lord. One of the 4 things mentioned is the most confidential knowledge, the easiest way to please Krishna. Now, Srila Prabhupada sits on his Vyasasana. And this is a science. If we don't personally reciprocate with him, then he's not going to personally reveal himself to us. He will reciprocate as we reciprocate with him. If we think he's just a fixture, that it's just a tradition that we offer him his japa beads during japa time, or that we put a book in front of him because that's what we do, we're pretending like he's here and that's what he did when he was here, then he'll remain a statue to us throughout our practice of Krishna consciousness. It's understood in all the sampradayas, Sri Sampradaya, Madhva Sampradaya. The founder acharya of the sampradaya offers a personal relationship with every single member throughout the centuries. And they hold that relationship first and foremost, even above their Diksha Guru. That's the tradition established in Sri and Madhva Sampradayas for centuries, 1,000+ years, for example. It works. So, when you walk by and don't offer obeisances because you're in a hurry, you got something to do, you're missing the most wonderful opportunity to please Srila Prabhupada and to please the Lord by bowing down and not simply a hatchet obeisances, but take the 30 seconds to say the pranam mantras. You don't have to. It's up to you. I don't mind saying, little breach of etiquette, but Dravida Prabhu sets an excellent example in this way. I never see him leave the temple or enter the temple without paying obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. Because he's not simply a philosophized person. There's a personal relationship there. And the more we offer ourselves to Srila Prabhupada, the more we sacrifice ourselves to Srila Prabhupada, realizing that there's no value to our devotional service hardly worth mentioning if we don't realize it has to be offered to the representative of Krishna. If you have your own Diksha Guru and Siksha Gurus and are working through them, that's fantastic. But above and beyond, there are no Diksha and Siksha Gurus in ISKCON without Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya. So with folded hands, I just want to draw that to your attention. It's a voluntary process and nobody's riding you, but I wanted to share with you that you can make so much advancement in just sacrificing. The Goswamis set the example, Srila Prabhupada set the example, his followers set the example. Offer obeisances to him. Pray that he can reveal himself to you and enter into your heart. He's more than willing, very anxious to offer his divine grace to each and every one of us. We just have to realize and endeavor for it. So are there any questions or comments? Thank you. Give the man a microphone.
The song we sing every morning.
Which one?
Shri Guru Charana Kevala Bhakti Samabandhami Savadana Mate. Now, we've, as uniquely, I'm sure, in ISKCON, we've edited that one line. My only.
It is unique.
Yeah, because that's.
I have a question, but should I wait?
Let me finish this first. So the translation that we have, that we recite, is from the original translation of that song in the songbook. The songbook went through several revisions. it came out in '73, which is pretty early. And it was by the request of Rajendranandana Swami. You know, he suggested the Prabhupada. Prabhupada agreed. He said yes, and he and Santosh put it together. I was there in Brooklyn at the time. Fine. But Rajendrananda, you know, he was a Western guy who took shelter of India to get away from the draft. He was the first devotee to go there. There were no temples. He was staying in Gaudiya Math. So his Bengali was kind of iffy. But still, it pretty much covers it. But this is a very important, and it brings back to your point. Sri Guru Chanana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma, the lotus feet of a spiritual master, are the abode, Sadma, of pure bhakti, which is fine in the translation. Bandho me, I bow down, Fande, me. Savadana Mate. Now, Savadana, he had with great awe and reverence, I think. I bow down with great awe and reverence to you. It actually means with great attention. Now, Prabhupada, I just hit upon this in a Vyasa Puja, they're quoting from him. Savadana means very carefully, not whimsically.
Prabhupada said that.
This is a quote from Prabhupada.
In a lecture or what?
This was in a quoted in the Vyasa Puja offering, but he's quoting from Prabhupada here. Okay. I'll find it. So that's, you know, it's not there in a translation, we say, but that's the essential. Like I've been told on Bengali roads when you're driving, they'll have that. Pay attention, careful. So the whole idea is that is to be done carefully. Carefully. Huh? It just says Savadana. In other words, watch out, beware, you know, be careful. So the idea is that the carefulness begins with me, with first of all, you know, reciting the mantra and understanding the words of the Ma Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna. Actually, that's, you know, beginning of being paying attention. But the idea is, as you mentioned, it's a meditation. It's an essential, as you so nicely pointed out, practice that we have, and we can't take it for granted. I mean, people will, you know, bow down. I'm not going to bow down. You know, this is rare where anyone wants to bow down. What the speaker bow down to the Guru and the Lord and so forth repeatedly during the day. So every time we do that, we should be with great attention, especially to Sri Prabhupada. Haribol.
Thank you for sharing that. My question was that came to mind, never had a chance. So we say it the way you encouraged us here in SanDiego, and is that the way that Narottam Das Thakur is praying to his guru, or is that the way, because you're not on that level, you encouraged us to express it in that way to come up to the sin?
No, that's what that is because what he's actually saying there, he's addressing, oh brothers,
Thank you.
Make the words of the Guru one with your heart, and don't desire anything else. It's a request, or it's an order. But in the song, it comes out. My only desire is to have the words of my spiritual master. How's it going? I'm sorry.
My only desire is that my consciousness is pure.
Yeah, by the words, which is a fine sentiment. But it's not what Narottam wrote. Prabhupada didn't get a chance. So there's difference. So I figured we're not going to overhaul the whole thing, although maybe we've been talking about that. We should actually recite the one uniquely. But it's like hardwired. They're all over the world.
Of course.
So this is my little compromise. Make it a prayer rather than a statement, because it's not true. Here we are in front of the deities.
Yeah, I always took the statement to be a prayer, an aspiration. But you said, oh, brothers, make the word. That's what it means. Oh, brothers.
Hey, everybody, all my God brothers, make the word one. He's exactly saying.
Such nectar. Madhusudana wanted to share with us that Srila Prabhupada, when he was with us, said that the earth could supply 10 times the population, but due to mismanagement, there's insufficient distribution. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, there's... Thank you for your attention, for your association. Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Samaveda Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki.